Ham Radio 360 podcast. We're talking FSQ, we're talking Linux, we're talking all sorts of things with the old tech guy coming up.
MTCRadio.com presents Ham Radio 360, the podcast. Brought to you by Elecraft. Now, here's your host, Kel Nelson, K4CDN.
Welcome into another episode of Ham Radio 360 podcast. It's hot in the deep south, and that's where I'm at, up here in the barn without the air. I'm going to have a new space, guys, by the way. Hint, hint. Hey, thank you very much for tuning in to the Ham Radio 360 podcast. Do this every other week. Ham Radio 360 is like a big umbrella. It's a brand, I guess you'd have to call it. And we have multiple podcasts about multiple topics, all of them revolving around the amateur radio hobby. This just happens to be the conversational interview-type program you get with me, the Godfather, as I've been called here of all things Ham Radio 360. This time through, I've got a call with Kevin Laughlin. His call sign is Kilo Bravo 9 Random Long Wire. We're going to catch up with Kevin in a few minutes. I got 3 segments with him. Started out talking about FSQ, then we get into some Linux and some other things, so don't miss out on that. I'll be winding up the show solo with some, entertainment opinions. I don't know what we'll see because I haven't recorded it yet, right? So we'll get there in a minute. Before I go too far, a couple of things. Texas, Louisiana, my peeps down in the deep south, God bless you. My family's been praying for you, and we sincerely hope you're okay. Wow. It's... What else do you say? We love you guys, and hope everybody's okay. Like I said, I've been podcasting for about 3.5 years. I started off with a couple of sponsors. The very first sponsor I ever had was Main Trading Company from Paris, Texas. Now, right now, I think Richard is probably somewhere between here and Japan, going to the big ICOM party in Japan. Yeah, I cannot wait to hear or see the YouTube videos or something of Richard with his cowboy boots on in Japan. That should be very, very interesting. So why am I telling you that? Well, ICOM is everywhere, and they've got great rigs, whether you're looking for walkie-talkies, Class A rigs to put on your desk there in your shack, something portable for the field. They've got it all, and I'm going to tell you, of course, to spend your money with my friends at Main Trading Company, MTCRadio.com. They've been with me from day one, and you won't find a better place to shop. The customer service is beyond comparison with their peers. I mean, it's just above the rim. So check them out, mtcradio.com. Pick up all your ICOM radios. Let Richard know Kel sent you from the Ham Radio 360 podcast, and he'll take extra special care of you. Kevin Laughlin, Kilo Bravo 9, and Romeo Lima Whiskey. We've talked on and off emails, back and forth for months. Been really interested in getting him here on the program to discuss FSQ. I have been wanting to learn about this FSQ mode for quite a while, and I actually found out about it through Julian, OH8STN. That's easy to say. our friend that's on YouTube. So Julian posted your video as well as a lot of other noise when he was, I don't want to call it noise, but he got excited when he learned about the mode, and he was doing a lot of testing and whatnot with it. And he linked your video. I found it in a Twitter post, and here I am today with you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So when I stumbled over the video, it kind of began helping me understand what the idea behind FSQ was. It's not necessarily like everybody wants to play with now, JT8, but it's more of a chat service. And if I'm not mistaken, it's really not made for just going out and trying to make DX contacts. I mean, is it really like a friend's kind of almost informal type net?
I'm still actually been thinking, since I did that video, I still think about what niche this mode would fall into. It's a chat mode, so it's more for communication, talking to other people, but it's also kind of like an organized net kind of mode where you could have multiple stations on frequency and direct messages to individual stations. So I'm sorry. I was just going to say, so help me understand here real quick, and I'll kind of put the cart before the horse.
But if I sent you a message, would everyone else receive the message, or would it go directly to you?
If you clicked on my call sign in the software, the message would be directed only to me. The other stations would receive it but ignore it.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to cut you off because it sounded like you were going somewhere there, so please excuse my my haste. But you were saying that it feels like a chat server for a group of friends who leave on a frequency and may kind of come back and forth throughout the day, possibly?
Yeah. It's not really real time in a sense. Like if you do digital like RTTY or PSK, as you're typing, he's seeing the letters, and as he's typing, you're seeing the letters decoded. It's real time back and forth. Whereas this, you don't actually see anything pop up until the message for you has been completely decoded. So there's long delays. It's kind of shares some DNA with ALE, which is the military automatic link establishment system. And it shares some DNA with traditional communication modes like RTTY or PSK. It's kind of a hybrid. It's sort of in between there. I'm not sure exactly where it would be used.
Well, when I look at it, I think it's kind of cool. And I'm watching your video. I'm watching a couple of other things. I'm reading about it. I'm trying to educate myself. And guys listening here, in all honesty, I have put off learning about this mode this entire time because I wanted to be able to learn about it with you. Now, I know that you guys may have been in it and out of it, and now everybody's JT8 or whatever's next week. But this is a mode that really intrigues me on a lot of different levels, most especially like within our local Aries group. But at the same time, I really like the way it feels when you don't see your message until it pops up, to where you just don't have a lot of clutter on the display screen. You're only seeing what's intended for you.
Right.
It feels to me like I'm back in maybe 1999, 2000 doing some AOL instant messaging. Do you have that same vibe?
That's kind of what I likened it to in the video. I think I said it was like a chat service like AIM or like texting on cell phones.
Yeah.
You get the full message that comes across at once. And anytime you had some kind of an organized group of people where you had to do message passing, to individual stations, it would work. I just don't know what situations that would apply to. I was listening to the Hurricane WatchNet last night, and I was thinking this might be the type of a scenario where FSQ would be useful. If you had a designated frequency and you had, a bunch of emergency stations all sitting on that frequency. And, it doesn't have to be HF. It could be over VHF too. Right. And then you could just direct messages specifically to certain stations. The EOC could say, okay, I need to tell the guy at Hospital 3 that we've got blood plasma heading their way. You could just send that message and know that it's just going to pop up on that guy's screen. So scenarios like that, I could see where it could be useful.
Yeah, it really seems to me, to echo you there, that would be a very good use for it if, of course, we were using it out here. I know some folks that use it, or I have read about folks using it on VHF, and it apparently works really well there because it's almost quasi VHF ready, I guess you would say. And I don't know. It seems like to me it's a good answer looking for a problem potentially, and it's just going to take somebody deciding to put it into practice and giving it a shot.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, it's kind of like a minimalist, a partial implementation of ALE. Have you ever read about ALE?
Yeah, matter of fact, from what little I do understand about it, it's from some past reading, and then again, our buddy Julian doing some of that here lately on his channel, making those established contacts. Pretty cool stuff, and I think that could we almost call this, the FSQ, could we almost call it like poor man's ALE?
Yeah, well, sort of, but not really. I mean, ALE at its design for the military was you'd have multiple HF stations at different posts or whatever, and they have several channels on different HF frequencies, and they wanted a way to organize that so that if I want to send a message to station Bravo Alpha, I know it's going to get there. And then the radios take care of the rest. They find the best frequency to use. They'll have frequencies on several different HF bands that they're constantly scanning through, sounding on and listening for each other on, so they know what propagation, the system knows what propagation is good between point A and point B, and picks that particular band and frequency to send the message. So there's a lot more automation in ALE. There's much more to it. FSQ is like throwing out all of that band hopping automation and automatic link establishment and letting you do that. You choose the frequency. Okay, I know we're going to be on this frequency. And then it just tries to do the message passing.
So we've got particular frequencies that are established here in the U.S., and I guess for different regions, really. And that's where you find the traffic for folks who are out there looking to make contacts. But that's not necessarily to say that you have to use X frequency between you and your buddy across town or on the other side of the county or something. You can utilize what works best for you guys, whether it's HF, VHF, or 6 meters maybe in between.
Right. Yeah, sure. There's calling channels. The 40 meters 7.104 megahertz is kind of the chosen calling frequency or common point. But you could shift off. If you were going to have a conversation with somebody and you didn't want to tie that up, you could say, hey, it's clear a couple kilohertz up, let's go up. Just like you do with any other mode. PSK 70.0 70.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one I can remember.
That's where you find most of the traffic, but I've run across guys having PSK QSOs above 7.1.
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
These are the recommended frequencies where you're probably going to find some activity if there's any going on, and you can move if you wanted to.
So we're going to refer back to your video, I'm sure, from time to time during the call.
Yeah, I watched it last night just so I'd be fresh on it. It was a while ago.
Yeah, it has been a while. Actually, it might have been wintertime when that one was produced, because it looked like you might have had a coat on or like an overshirt or something. But
yeah, it gets kind of chilly in the winter.
It does. And down here in the deep south, no air conditioning running now. It's really still warm. But when you created that video, you had a QSO with a friend of yours. Who I believe was also a 9 call. So how far away were you guys? You were on HF, but how far away were you guys during that QSO?
He was just across town.
Wow.
Yeah, he was just across town. It was just, I needed to shoot this video. Well, I'll help you out. So he fired his radio up. There's not a lot of activity on FSQ. I would sit there in the evenings, several nights in a row wanting to film that on 7.104. And I'd hear an occasional station, but I could never get anybody to come back to me. So I was just like, I'll just schedule something with somebody local just to do the demo.
Yeah. So basically ground wave propagation.
Yeah.
Throw it out your window and he can hear it, by the way. Just turn the speaker up and he can audio couple it for you.
Yeah, I think he's only about 6-7 miles away.
Nice. Well, hey, that's further proof it does work really close in. And if you see some other examples online, you can see it work much further out. So it is an opportunity to communicate with people utilizing a different mode that for this week is not JT8.
I don't know if you call that communication.
Well, I'm not sure what it is because I've never done any of the JT modes. Matter of fact, this one is it's kind of funny how 8 has just kind of grasped everybody. And I think it may be the speed and how the call progresses versus the 65 and the 9, but it's really funny. Yeah. And it's funny to me how people just, latched onto this. And anytime I get on the repeaters or I'm listening on other repeaters and whatnot, I'm hearing, help me set this up so I can do 8. And I'm working on 8. I'm trying to make this contact. And it's kind of taken over. It's almost like the eclipse is over. Let's talk about JT8.
It's a fever, and it's the equivalent of texting on cell phones, I think, even though there's more communication there, the JT modes, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes. There's a lot of guys that really enjoy that stuff. But they were designed for a specific thing. They were designed for weak signal propagation, EME moon bounce and stuff, where you only get slivers of signal through. And what people are doing with it is they're stuffing their logs full of, look, I contacted New Zealand and all that. But, what did you really do? Your computer and your radio kind of pinged each other, and that was it. It's not communication per se.
Yeah. And like you said, everybody has their own way to play, and I guess that works for some. Here I am having an actual conversation over the internet, of course, but doing it with voices, which is my preferred method. Although I really dig the digital modes.
When I was 14 or 15 and first getting interested in radio, my dad had a ham that he worked with, and he invited me to come to his shack. And 15 years old, I was just all excited about that. We're talking back in right around 1980, and he was quite an advanced ham for the time. He had the ability to do slow scan TV and RIDI, which back then RIDI was a big teletype machine, banging away in there. And for slow scan TV, he had a converted fax machine, which used a rotating drum and paper that was coated with sort of a metallized silvery coating and a little wire that would touch the drum. And then the drum would rotate and the wire would slowly move across it as it rotated. And the incoming signal would get amplified to a current on the wire that would burn off some of that silver coating on the paper. The stronger the signal, the darker the line. And so as the drum rotated and the wire moved across it, you drew an image line by line from the slow scan signal coming over the radio. So that was how they did it back then. It was all mechanical. But RIDI was just flat out communication. You were having a conversation with somebody by typing. And I really like PSK for that, because it's quick and instant and really good with low, weak signals.
Right.
But even there, it's hard to find a conversation. Most people that I get, I'm typing on the keyboard and I'm, hello, hi, my name's Kevin. And what I get back is their macros. They just click down their macros. Here's my brag file. Here's my station info. And here's my 73 button. Click, click, click. Oh boy, another contact. It's like, I wanted to talk.
Well, that kind of leads me into something that I didn't really anticipate, but, for, I guess, different modes of operation, especially inside the digital modes, there are some rules or some unwritten rules, maybe some not so gentlemanly agreements, but I've noticed the same thing. A lot of times it's just a 5-9 kind of almost like a contest contact. And that's the end of it. Now, some days that's really all you want, but there are other days, like you're saying, hey, I'm looking for somebody to talk to. Can we have a conversation?
And once in a while you run into them, but it's not like it used to be.
Yeah.
We're slowly devolving to the days of the Jetsons. I don't know if you remember the Jetsons, but George would go to work, and what would he do? He'd sit at a chair and he'd push a button.
Yeah.
That's JT. He'd sit in a chair and push a button and go, oh boy, more numbers for the log, yay.
Right. So when you operate digital, you said you enjoy PSK 31. I mean, is that your go-to when you do digital mode operating, or do you have other opinions?
Yeah, pretty much. But I like to converse. If the band seems dead, that's where I'll go to one of the JT modes. When there's just not enough propagation there to do voice, and CW would even be difficult, there might be a chance of at least making a contact for the log with somebody in South America or New Zealand or somewhere. So that's where I like the JT modes.
Hey, can you stick around for another segment here on the podcast?
Sure, I got all day.
Okay, hang on, guys. We'll be right back. We're chatting with Kevin, KB9RLW. Back in a moment. Elecraft.com is hands-on ham radio, the brand new beast. That's right, the legal limit amplifier certified by the FCC, taking orders now. Find it, the KX2, the KX3. Everything you're looking for Elecraft is at Elecraft.com. It's hands-on ham radio, and it's some of the finest stuff that you'll ever get your hands on. All right, so we're back with Kevin, Kilo Bravo 9, Romeo Lima Whiskey. And,
or as somebody recently... I've had that call for years, and recently on 2 meters, somebody referred to me as Kilo Bravo 9 Random Long Wire, and I did a face palm and said, "Oh my gosh, that's perfect!" And all these years, I've had that call.
Until someone else says it, you don't ever think about it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I know how you feel. I had a 2x3 before I got my General and changed it to a Vanity with my initials and whatever. And right before I changed it, some guys came up with some of the best, different ways to say it. And I was like, man, I should have kept, oh, well. So I get what you're saying. And random long wire, that's what I started with as an amateur general class licensee. Had a random wire up at about 8 or 9 feet.
That was my novice antenna as well.
Yeah, I talked all over the world on the crazy thing.
Yeah, I worked from Michigan to Hawaii with 1.5 watts on a Heathkit HW8 and a wire running up out of my bedroom window to a tree.
Don't you love it? And can we make this thing complicated or what as amateurs?
Yeah, it's as easy or as complicated as you want it.
Exactly, which is one of the things that I like about the potential of using FSQ within my local friend group here and potentially around the state of South Carolina, maybe up and down the coast here a little ways, as we look for some answers in our local Aries group for trying to find the best digital mode that isn't WinLink. Right now, the state is only working with WinLink, which is a great program, and I'm not knocking it, but we're looking for an alternative that doesn't require so much work to get some folks interested in doing digital modes to talking back and forth to the EOC and whatnot. So FSQ really caught my eye back when Julian, the Survival Tech Nord, was talking about it on his YouTube channel, his Twitter feed, and his Instagram. I got led over to Kevin's video about the FSQ and FSQ call software. And I'd like for you to tell me a little bit about getting into using the FSQ. Was it just a curiosity thing? Did you decide, hey, I'm going to try this and then make a video about it? Or was it something that you used a little bit and enjoyed the service?
Well, I've run FL Digi for years, and every now and then they release a new version that's got extra modes added in. And that's how I discovered it. I saw it on the list and said, what's this FSQ thing? And went and did a little research on it and then started to play with it.
Nice. And that's the cool thing about the actual mode itself, in my opinion, is that you have the software over here to run it by itself, or you can use the ubiquitous FL Digi, which if you're a ham really in 2017 and you don't have that installed somewhere in your shack, you're about 5 years behind Kale. So pick up a copy of FL Digi. It's free. It runs across everything, right? Windows, Linux, iOS, everybody can run FL Digi.
And Mac, yep.
Yeah. So tell me, when you decided to get this thing going, when you wanted to see it happen, you said that there was not a lot of traffic, so you had to make a sked with a local operator to get your video created. Have you used it since that time, and have you seen any up or down in the traffic, or is it just kind of out there waiting for somebody to use it? Oh,
once in a while, I'll if I'm sitting at the radio and tuning around, I might pop by one of the standard frequencies for it, and if I hear something, I'll fire the software up and see what's going on. But it's not been picking up. I don't think it's been trickling off, but I don't think it's been picking up. Yeah. I'll hear some of the same stations. If I tune to FSQ and like 7.104, there's a couple of guys that just about every time I run it for a night and just let it sit there, I'll come over and I'll see that one or two of those guys have talked to each other again. So it's there's the guys that hang out there.
Right. Do you have any experience at all with running it VHF or UHF?
I've been meaning to experiment with that with some local guys, but it's just been kind of hard to coordinate that. Everybody's so busy these days.
Which is one of the reasons that these quick QSO modes, folks are really enjoying those to get in and get out. I've got 30 minutes before she makes me go cut the grass. Let's see if I can get South America, Japan or something, and bang, 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 I'm done.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the JT modes are good for that.
How long have you been a ham? Because you said you kind of got bit by the bug back when you were 15, back in the 80s. How long have you been operating?
I think I had my novice license when I was 16. So that would be 1982, I think. Nice. And that was back when you had to, I had to drive to Chicago or get my dad to drive me to Chicago, go up the elevator into this big building and sit across from the man in black who'd sit there with his arms folded staring at you while you took the test. And then he'd give you the code test. And it was a lot of pressure back then. So you really had to know your stuff when you went in to get the license.
I can imagine, man, it being a real maybe intimidating. Is that a good word to use?
Yeah, it was a little bit. Yeah. When I say men in black, I'm not kidding. They looked like the suits that the men in black were wearing. The dark suit, dark tie. This guy even had tinted glasses, not quite sunglasses, but they were dark glasses. and the butch haircut, the military haircut. But yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah, compare that to today, where you go into you sit down with your VEs, and there are a bunch of older middle-aged guys, and they're cutting up and wanting to encourage you to do good and pass, and we're going to do try to get you in and out of here and get your ticket. And I'm very grateful that things changed the way they have.
Yeah, it's made it more accessible. Yeah. Well, there's a downside of that too, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah. And you're going to have that one way or the other. You're going to either have an influx and the hobby grows, you're going to have everybody getting shut down and it just disappears.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you see all you see is the two guys on FSQ call having that same conversation they did just last week.
That's Fred and George again. Yep.
Now, you have a YouTube channel. And, of course, we mentioned that a few minutes ago, but you call yourself the old tech guy, but you got a head full of hair. It may be white, salt and pepper, but it's a head full, a lot more than I have. I'm quite jealous, matter of fact. But you do a lot of videos about a lot of different things, electronics and amateur radio associated. Is this something you just kind of started watching YouTube and said, hey, I could do that, and got into it? Or how did you begin making videos for the hobby?
Well, it was about 3 years ago. Excuse me. I had been using YouTube for my kid's stuff. He was going to high school. He was in the marching bands, and so I'd film the bands, and I started posting the videos of that, and did it well enough that the parents were all, encouraging me and watching my videos, because they were shooting with cell phones and things, and I'd come in with a little HD camcorder and a tripod and microphones and make a pretty decent video. And I enjoyed that. And then I don't remember. I'd have to go back and actually look at the videos to see what some of the early ones were about. But I think that I just, I did a couple of things that I thought were cool and posted them on YouTube to see what would happen, and got positive feedback. And so I continued with that, and they eventually got more complex and more interesting and intricate. And I got better feedback. And then I started to do videos of some of the things that I was building, and like a lot of people, I would build things out of need. I don't think it really took off until the Arduino video, when I needed a digital interface and I couldn't afford a signal link. I was unemployed at that point, and so I designed and built this interface, and I built it around an Arduino, and that video really took off. And I got a lot of feedback, and I had people actually building my design and, sending me pictures and emails and thanking me for stuff. And it's like, hey, this is kind of fun. I'm enjoying this. Maybe I can make money off it eventually and survive, because I was still unemployed at that point and not having any luck getting interviews. And so I just started doing more. And then it just sort of kept growing. And you don't really make a lot of money off YouTube. I don't know if you've ever tried that or not, but you make somewhere between $1 and $2 per 1,000 views would be a rough average, right? So most of my videos that I've put up that haven't even reached 1,000 views, I've probably made $1 off of.
It took a lot more than $1 to create that video.
Oh yeah. It's it can be hours. The Arduino video, for example, I spent days on that. I designed the thing, I had to build it, and you have to film the different segments, and then get all that footage together, and then there's the editing, and then filming more to fill in or fix things. I can have, in a quick one, I can have 3 hours of work. Most of them I'll have 5 to 6 hours of work. Some of them that are multi-part, like the Echophone radio that I restored recently. That was a few weeks of working on it every now and then in the evenings. A lot of filming, and I must have had the media file folder when I was ready to start editing, had 50-some files in it that were audio and video segments and schematics and drawings and graphics and slides and overlays and titles and things. There's a lot of work to it. There's really a lot of work to it. You'd have to really hit the ground in a niche and gain thousands and thousands of subscribers and views to really start making money on YouTube.
That's one of the things that it kind of mirrors podcasting some. First is the amount of work that goes into it. When you just consume something, you don't realize, like when I sat there and watched your video, there was all kind of time that you never see there. And it's almost like somebody needs to make a YouTube video about making a YouTube video in real time. Just so folks can see the red line at the bottom, is like 4 times as long, 8 times as long as the actual finished product.
Yeah, I did a video on making my videos, but I edited the heck out of it. So it was about 3 hours making that video that lasted, 10 minutes?
Yeah, and people just, it's not that they don't appreciate what you're doing, but a lot of them don't understand what it takes to create what you're creating. For instance, my boys, I've got 3 boys, my 2 oldest really enjoy stop motion photography, making those Lego movies with whatever they're into this week. It could be Star Wars, could be G.I. Joe, could be a combination of Star Wars and G.I. Joe or something else. You never know.
That's fun stuff.
Yeah. But they just shoot thousands of pictures and then mash them all together, and you get like a 2.5 minute video, and they've spent 3 evenings working on this thing, and it's on and gone, and if you're not watching them, you don't know what it takes.
Oh, right. Yeah. When I was a kid, my best friend and I had a 8mm film camera that could do frame by frame, and G.I. Joe dolls and Hot Wheels cars and some lighter fluid, and we put together a whole saga. It took us several weekends.
Yeah. Now, if you could put those on YouTube, you'd get some views on those.
Maybe.
Take them to Costco. Yeah. All right. Back in a moment, guys. You're listening to and ladies, you're listening to the Ham Radio 360 podcast. Did you guys hear the latest episode of The Workbench? They had my buddy John on there, Jeremy, George, and what were they talking about? Well, above everything else, in the conversation, there was a lot of talk about 3D printing and a lot of talk about SDR radios. And what are they using? They're using the gear from our buddy Joe over at airspy.us, the finest SDR receiving dongles and accessories that you can get anywhere on the planet, airspy.us. So we've got on with this Kevin. His call is KB9 random long wire. I like that. Isn't that how it always goes? Kevin was telling me just right off the air between breaks that he has recently created himself a new intro to his YouTube channel videos. Kevin, you said it's CGI. It's all done, and you did it yourself. Yeah.
It's a guy hanging from a rope on a big building downtown, painting my call sign and graffiti letters across it.
Yeah, that didn't take 5 or 6 minutes, I'm sure.
No, that took an entire Saturday. I shot the building, and then the rest of it I did all graphically using the GIMP and a lot of frames, and then the video editing. I use all open source software here. My machine runs Linux, and all my stuff is free and open source. Well,
I heard GIMP, and I remember the one Linux machine that I loved until it just died. It was a little netbook that someone had put Mint on. And it had GIMP in it, and that caught my ear. So you're an open source guy. I know that you've in your video that I watched about the FSQ call, you were using Wine to operate the Windows software.
Yep.
So you're an open source guy. You're like our buddies on Linux in the Ham Shack.
Yeah. Well, I like to feel like I own my computer.
Yeah. I can't say that I argue with you in principle at all. So. That's pretty cool stuff. A lot of people get real hung up. This is totally off topic, but a lot of people get really hung up on having a Windows PC because they want to run WinLink, or they think that it's so much easier to operate a Windows PC versus a Linux machine. I know that's an excuse, but how would you address a ham who's potentially looking at an alternative operating system in their shack, and how would you present Linux to them as a feasible way to operate inside the shack versus Windows?
Well, you sort of touched on part of the reason that most people don't want to stray from Windows is they say that it's easier, but I don't believe that it is. I think that it's just more familiar. It's what they've already learned, and they've gotten over the hump, the learning curve, and they understand where things are in Windows. So that's what they define as easy. I think actually Linux is easier to work with. The Linux desktops, they've really come a long way in the past couple of decades, and things are in logical places. They're easy to find. When I go to my menu, for example, I'm looking at categories, accessories, ham radio, internet, office, graphics. I'm not looking at a bunch of company names and trying to remember who made that program that I installed that I want to get to, Right. Things are organized better. There's a lot of little things. Right now, I'm starting a new job, or I'm working at a new job, and we're, of course, on Windows workstations. And I've really discovered how many of the little things that I appreciate about Linux that I miss when I'm in the office environment. Things like I can move the mouse pointer over a window and scroll its contents without having to click on it. If I open a new window in a program, I can just start typing. I don't have to click on it. I just opened this window. Of course, it has the focus. In the Windows environment at work, if I open a new browser window, I have to click on it before I can type. I don't get that. It's like, and it really slows me down. So I think it's easier. It's very, very, very stable. You have just all kinds of choices. You can have your desktop environment look any way you want. There's desktops that look and behave like the Windows desktop. You can have it look and behave like a Mac. I'm using Mate, which is a desktop that's similar in function to the classic Windows 7 type of desktop, where you've got a bar and menus, desktop icons, and you can put things in that bar. I've got the current weather up there. I've got my processor usage and memory up there in the bar next to the time. I like having that information available. Windows and the Mac OS are going more tablet-like. They're simplifying and dumbing down the interface to the George Jetson button-pushing analogy from earlier, And I don't think that it's too complex to have this extra stuff. I think that it's utility. But anyway, Linux, it's stable. I have a netbook here that I bought 8 years ago. And it came with Windows. I never even booted it up. The first thing I did was took the hard drive out, put in an SSD, and loaded Linux on it. And I have done nothing but use it since. I have never had to reload it. I've never lost any data or corrupted any data or had it crash or not boot or act weird. It's never slowed down. I don't have to defrag the file system. That's so 30 years ago, and you still have to do that with NTFS. And I have choices about things like the file system. If I don't want to use a certain file system, if I want to use a different file system, I can do that. I have choices, Right. I can make it look the way I want it to look. I can make it behave the way I want it to behave. It's rock solid, stable. Build it and use it. It's just going to keep working for you, aside from hardware failures. It's just going to keep working for you.
So regarding amateur radio, plugging that into it, how does that work out for you?
Well, there's a lot of software. There's many different loggers. There's FL Digi, and as well as other digital programs, like there's Slow Scan Television, QSS TV. There's satellite tracking software. There's SDR software. Things can be made to work together. I've had the satellite tracking software talking to a rig control program to control the frequency on the radio for the Doppler shift. The sort of things that people say, but I can do this on Windows. Well, you can do that on Linux as well.
Right.
So there's just about everything.
There's a lot of utility there.
There's a lot of utility. Yeah, you're not going to be lacking for much if you go with Linux. You're going to be able to run FLDG and get all the digital modes. You're going to be able to run WSJTX to get the JT modes. You're going to have slow scan TV. You're going to have facsimile software. You're going to have specialized little things like there's a program called Multimon that just decodes all these different commercial text modes. I was receiving teletext stuff using POCSAG from the local hospital and piped the audio through Multimon, and it just decoded the text. So I could see what they were doing. Or paging transmitters. You could decode the pagers. Wow. There's an incredible program called New Radio, GNU Radio, that I think has been ported to Windows and Mac. But it is a sort of a modular programming language for radio. You can build a radio out of modules with it, and it can be incredibly complex. I've seen guys use it to decode the digital telemetry stream off of a commercial communications satellite. They just built all the modules to do the different processes involved in that. So it's like the ultimate software-defined radio. It's complex. I'm approaching it like walking up to Mount Everest. It's huge, but it's powerful. So yeah, there's a lot that you can do. Now there is specialized things for Windows a lot of times that you just don't have a choice. For example, Radioddity sent me this little DMR radio, and their programming software was Windows only. And I could not get it to work under Wine, so I actually had to build a Windows virtual machine to run it. But I've got that option.
Right.
I've VirtualBox, and I've got Windows as an application. Basically, I run it when I need it.
A lot of people are afraid, and I'm not trying to sign you up for a video here, but I know that a lot of people, when it comes to Linux, they think it's all about coding. They have to go to the C prompt, they have to be in the command mode there. I didn't experience that when I was using it on that netbook like you spoke of. It felt just like a green the green screen's the wrong thing. Mint was green, so everything was green. It was beautiful, actually, but it felt really nice, and I got really used to it. And I almost, I was so disappointed when the little machine died. It just gave up its ghost. There was nothing left, Well,
the other thing that I tout Linux about is performance.
Yeah.
I've taken older hardware. My sister had a laptop, and it was a regular thing. 2 or 3 times a year, I'd have to go visit just to fix their computer, which was basically take all the viruses out or reload Windows, and its performance was, as Windows moved on, they got to Windows 7, its performance was pretty abysmal. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, what do you do with this thing? She said, we just browse Facebook and do email. And I said, is that it? Yeah, that's it. Occasionally they would write something up, the kids would do homework. Yeah. And I said, well, let's try something. And I went ahead and I put Linux on there, and I put Linux Mint on it because it was, it's the easiest one to transition to if you're coming from Windows.
Yeah.
I said, let's try this for a month and see what you think about it. I didn't hear from her for a month. And then like 3 months later, I called her and said, so how are things going? You want me to put Windows back on there? And she said, heck no. Because it was performing so much better than it ever had with Windows. Yeah. And it didn't work. And they've had that same computer now for 4 years. I've never done another thing to it, and they still use it every day.
Wow. It is very lightweight. It's not very heavy. And the netbook I had did not have anything to do with amateur radio, but it did give me a peek into the reality and the utility of Linux. I know that our friends on Linux and Ham Shack podcast have talked numerous times about the different it's the different varieties of Debian that you can bring in that have all the ham radio stuff built into them. So it's just a suite. Is that what you call it? Is that the correct term there? Because I'm not a computer guy. Distribution. Okay, so you bring in the distribution that has all of the stuff that you would want to play with for ham radio built into it. I mean, it's almost like cheating.
Yeah, it is kind of. That's the nice thing about it. It's the Swiss Army knife of operating systems. You can build it to suit, and that's what these distributions are. Is people have taken a very bare bones Linux machine and installed all the right software, and then compressed that down into a single CD image, and this is your distribution until you boot it up and you've got everything ready to go. There's a Raspberry Pi. There's several Raspberry Pi versions of Debian that are customized for specific things. There's one that boots right into an Amiga emulator, and you can just basically make, here's my Amiga. It's a Raspberry Pi. And there's an amateur radio version. And then the SDR Play guys, after I did the Linux scripts for their SDR Play hardware, they used that as a building point, and they actually created a Raspberry Pi image that's a ready-to-go SDR image for working with the SDR Play.
So it seems to me that we purposefully limit ourselves. Maybe just like someone who doesn't want to study for their amateur extra exam, or maybe someone who doesn't want to learn code, or they're intimidated by both of those or either of those. Maybe that's somebody who's always been an FM guy on VHF, and he hears people talking about this FSQ mode, but it's like, I can't do that. It's almost like we're limiting ourselves to what we're used to, what we're comfortable with, and we just kind of suck it up and take what we can get. But there's a lot out there that we're not really utilizing, and it gives life to older units that we feel like that have surpassed their time here. You can put Linux on an old machine, man, and have a brand new one. Pretty
much, yeah. It'll be faster and feel fresh. But yeah, you sort of touched on it there. It's a comfort zone. People settle into a comfort zone, and I'm here and everything works. Why would I want to do anything else?
This is easy. I push the button. It's on.
It's like, well, this is ham radio. This is a hobby that was started, that germinated and went through its pupa stage as an experimental hobby, as people building what they needed and trying new things. And, you couldn't there wasn't a comfort zone.
Right.
It was, you were forcing yourself to march at the frontier and move along with it. And so, do something, get out there and try it out. That's what the hobby's about. Like FSQ, here's something new. Try it out. See what see if it'll work for you. If you have a use for it, and if not, hey, play with it for a while just to have something to do. It's it's fun.
Cool stuff. Kevin, thank you for coming on, man. Enjoyed having you here on the podcast. Sure,
man. Thanks very much. And anybody that wants to check out any of my videos, you can just search my call sign on YouTube. I've embedded that in most of them, so you should find most of them. My channel's right there.
Excellent. And we'll have the FSQ call video in the show notes here at hamradio360.com. But again, man, I enjoyed chatting with you. I know it's been a long time. We've had email conversation for 6 months now. So thank you for dealing with me as stuff would come up and come down. But really appreciate you being here. And thank you for your time creating those things for us to learn from and enjoy. As a fellow creator, I understand that, and I really, really appreciate your time.
Oh, well, no, thank you, Cale, and I enjoyed talking to you. And I'll link your podcast as well in one of my videos here. Probably talk about this too, because you got some good stuff there. I've enjoyed listening to some of it.
Well, thank you very much, guys. His name is Kevin. His call is Kilo Bravo 9 Romeo Lima Whiskey. You'll find his links in the show notes. Check him out on YouTube. Just type in KB9RLW. Again, Kevin, thank you. We'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you, Cale.
Thanks again, Kevin, man. Really cool to have you on. And wow, the great conversation. I tell you, I learned a lot right there. Hope you guys did too. Hey, don't forget to check him out. You can find him, KB9RLW, or the Old Tech Guy, on Facebook and YouTube. I'll have the links in the show notes. All right. Hey, Kenwood Radios. I'm looking around my shack, and they're everywhere. TS50, TS850, 71A, 281s. What is that? It's a 707. That's an old school rig. I got that in my old truck, by the way. I got the boxes. I got them ready to deploy here. The 281s ready to go for Aries. They all came from mtcradio.com. If you're looking for Kenwood gear, there's no other place to go than mtcradio.com. They're a show sponsor. I'm going to tell you this, but that's not why, right? Really good prices, really great people. Check them out, mtcradio.com. And here we are at segment number 4, the Ham Radio 360 podcast. Episode 86 is completely, totally unbelievable that we're still here. I mean, honestly, guys, it was just like a 5-part joke for a interview kind of a thing with some buddies on an internet forum, and here we are. And that's the APRS Digipeater. Thank you, KWF. He did a great job on that. Just I still have it here in the shack. It's running, but it's in the shack because I have to buy a new rack. Another expense to move the fire department repeater out of my repeater rack. So anyway, it's going, and it won't be long. It'll be on the air, which kind of makes me wonder about some future additions to the repeater regarding some sort of internet connectivity. I did an intermediate non-scientific poll in the Facebook group the other day. What 3 things do you want from me that I'm not giving to you now? By far the biggest response was YouTube videos. I'm not ready for that yet. I don't have the space or the equipment. We'll talk about it. I'm not against doing it, okay? But I'm going to have to probably have some help with some of those things. Additionally, an internet DMR, IRLP, kind of a check-in net thing. There was a requester for that. I'm not above that, against it either. If that's something we can make happen with DMR or potentially IRLP, I don't know. We could do that if somebody wants to to begin working to spearhead that up, just let me know. I'd love to chat with you guys. I mean, I'm chatting with you right now. I'm sitting in my barn, pouring sweat, having a one-sided conversation, and now you're smiling, so it worked. Thank you very much for smiling and sticking around to the end of this program. Thank you again to Kevin for being here with me. Thank you so much to all the folks out there that are just making this thing happen and being a part of what we're doing. You know, new patrons come on all the time. Thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate you tagging on, as well as Sterling came on. Thanks, dude. Great to see your name just pop up in my inbox. That was awesome. So thanks to both of you guys this week for becoming Patreon patrons. If you're interested in that, just go to the website, kind of scroll down a little bit. You'll see the orange kind of P that says support. Thank you for your support. That's what it is. Click it. $1 a month or as much as you want to spend, it's there. And you just type in your info and bang, it takes care of it for you. Thank you to everyone. Andrew, I see you in Arizona. Thank you guys. Anyway, I'm looking around my shack. There's something I have to remember to tell you, and I think it's Curtis. And Curtis over at Everything Ham Radio is doing these call sign plaques, and I think he's lost his mind, really. He's doing these things for $15 each this month to introduce his product to you out there in the hemisphere. Curtis, Everything Ham Radio, will create for you a plaque with your name and call sign on it, and he'll do it for $15. I told him he was crazy. He's going to be overwhelmed, but Curtis is an awesome guy, and I hope that he's going to be really successful with this. They look great. Mine that he created for me, he did one for George, Jeremy as well. They look beautiful. Mine's hanging right here in my shack, right beside the old Photime podcast. A little memento that I had made a while back. So thank you guys for the opportunity to come hanging out with you. Don't forget I got jackets. I've been promising I'm going to take them out of the store, but you guys keep buying them, so I keep leaving them in there. I haven't sold a load of them, but they've been going out. They look great if you're interested in a soft shell type wintertime water resistant, wind resistant coat. They're bad. I mean, really, they're bad news. So check them out in the store. You can find the shopping link there, hamradio360.com. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. I don't know what else to say besides thank you so very much for listening. And finally, to my friends and fellow hams and citizens in the Gulf Coast of the U.S., God bless you. We have and we will continue to pray for you. We wish you all the best. Thank you so much for listening, every one of you. God bless you, 73.